Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Let me just set aside my prepared remarks. I would ask consent that they be submitted for the record and make a couple of comments, if I can. A lot of attention paid to refugees coming from Syria to the United States. In the last year, there have been about 2,000 refugees. It's not an easy process to go through, as my colleagues know. It's a process that can take as much as 2 years. And it starts with vetting by the United Nations, one of their high commands. And if folks make the cut to get to the next step, then they go through a bunch of screens, personal interviews, in-person interviews. Data, to the extent that we have data files to check, we do all those. DHS does some of them. We work with other countries with whom we're allied. Out of the 2,000 that have come in as refugees in the last year or two, about 2% were military-aged males, 2%. And of the folks that have come to our country so far, I'm told, out of those 2,000, not one person has been arrested. Not one person's been arrested. It takes 2 years, and it's a process that if I were a bad guy trying to get in, that's the last place the last way I try to get in. If I were a bad guy trying to get in, I might try a visa waiver program, and I might try just coming over as a student or as a tourist. And good news, I understand out of the 4 French nationals who were killed in Paris, either 3 or all 4 of them were folks who would have been allowed to get on a plane because we had them suitcased in terms of who they were. They would never get on a plane to come to the U.S. One of the things that challenges for us I think, is to understand. We've had a hearing already this year on visa waivers, I recall, and we need to go back and dust off the books, see what we learn in terms of how we're strengthening that program. A lot has been done. What started off as a travel facilitation program has now become an information sharing program with 38 other nations. In order for them to participate in this program with us, they have to agree to provide our access to every kind of data file, intelligence file that we ask for. And if they don't, then they're not included as one of the visa waiver countries. One of the other developments is, and not too long ago, was if you want to be a visa waiver country, of these 38 countries, you have to make sure that if somebody's passport is stolen or lost, it is reported to Interpol. And that way, when somebody shows up trying to use that passport to come to the U.S. or some other place, they can be stopped in their tracks. The preamble to our Constitution says, in order to form a more perfect union, my guess is that as much as we're trying to make the visa waiver program better, it still isn't perfect. And our goal should be perfection. And we're going to work on it every day. And I think there's some things we can do legislatively, hopefully in this committee, and to work with some of our colleagues in other committees of jurisdiction. The last thing that I'd say, we face a moral dilemma here. The Pope was in town 2 months ago, spoke to all of us, invoked the Golden Rule, treat other people the way we want to be treated, invoked Matthew 25, the least of these, when I was a stranger in your land, did you take me in? And everybody stood up and applauded in our joint session, you may recall that, when he said those words. And now we're not so sure we believe those words. And the question is, we have a moral imperative to the least of these, to treat other people the way we want to be treated. We have an equally strong moral imperative, and I think a duty by virtue of our oath of office to make sure that we don't meet that moral imperative to the least of these by putting at risk the citizens of this country. And the question for us is, can we do both? Can we do both? I think we can. And I think morally and just by common sense, we need to do both. And our challenge is to figure out how to do that and to thread the needle, build on the good work that's been done, and to continue to go forward. Last thing I'll say is this. Well, the Department of Homeland Security is doing good work in communities where there's a heavy, large Muslim population in this country, just to try to make sure that we're inoculating, helping those communities inoculate against the success, and as the Chairman's mentioned this, the success of efforts to use social media to radicalize our own people. And there's a request by the administration to increase the funding for that program. It seems to be working. And I think as we consider the appropriations bills in the near future, I hope we'll keep in mind what works and do more of that, including in this regard. And lastly, there's a fellow named Adam Zubin, I think it's Adam Zubin, who is Senator Hyde, do I have that name right? Adam Zubin, who was heavily involved in a leadership role when we were trying to cut off Iran's access to international financial markets, when we were trying to cut off North Korea and their access to international financial markets. And I understand he's been nominated at a very senior position within Treasury to do that work, to lead that effort, including cutting off ISIS financially. And there's obviously work that still needs to be done. And can you, Senator Heitkamp, is that nomination still pending in the Banking Committee?
It's still pending. We held this hearing, so the hearing's been completed, pending vote in the Banking Committee.
Yeah, this committee's done great work in making sure that the senior level of leadership in the Department of Homeland Security, all those vacant positions a year and a half ago, they've been filled, and we've done very good work in that regard. And this is another nomination that could be very helpful in terms of the root cause. Cutting off ISIS money, it's all well and good to crush them on the battlefield, but in terms of making sure that their money is gone, this is a good way to do it. And we got a good guy who's willing to serve. We need to get him done. Thank you.